Let me ask you something. How many hours of sleep did you get last night? If you're like most people, the answer is probably not enough. And if that's the case, don't worry, you're definitely not alone. According to the National Sleep Foundation, over 1/3 of American adults report getting less than 7 hours of sleep per night. We've all heard that getting a good night's sleep is essential for our health and well-being, but what does that actually mean? And how can we make sure we're getting the best sleep possible? Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach, and my mission is to help you get into the best shape of your life, no matter your age. We have a great show for you today. Dr. Amir Reuveny is here to share how you can use technology to improve your sleep. But before we get to that, I want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by Energy Bits. Are you feeling run down, tired, or stressed? Chlorella and spirulina are two of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. They're both algae that have been consumed for centuries because of their amazing health benefits. You can improve your energy, focus, immune system, and so much more by incorporating these powerful superfoods into your daily routine. Energy Bits makes it easy and convenient to get your daily dose of chlorella and spirulina. I personally take spirulina every morning for its antioxidants, omega-3s, and the 40 vitamins and minerals to help improve my energy and focus. And I take their chlorella every evening for its super high chlorophyll and vitamins and minerals to help with things like immune function, recovery, and gut health. I recommend starting out with their Vitality Bits. This is their 50-50 blend of spirulina and chlorella. You can find those over at energybits.com. And because you're a listener of this podcast, you can save 20% off your purchase when you use the coupon code SILVEREDGE at checkout. Again, that's energybits.com and use the coupon code SILVEREDGE. That's SILVEREDGE all run together at checkout to save 20%. And one last thing, if you'd like to learn more about Energy Bits and the superfood powers of algae, I recorded a podcast episode with the CEO and Chief Science Officer of Energy Bits a few months ago titled The World's Most Powerful Superfood with Catherine Arnston. Be sure to go back and give that a listen if you'd like to learn more. Okay, enough of that. Let's get on with today's show. My guest today is Dr. Amir Reuveny. Amir is the CEO of Wesper, a technology company that brings clinical-grade sleep measurement and interpretation technology to consumers like you. He has a PhD in electrical engineering and information systems and is passionate about making better sleep more accessible for everyone. I started out by asking Amir how he got interested in the subject of sleep technology.
Actually, I knew that I wanted to go after endeavors and ventures that will really help people and impact their life positively. And when I look at how people today measure their sleep and track their sleep over time, clinically, I was really astounded by the level of, how expensive it is, how cumbersome it is, how discrete in time it is that you really don't get a full understanding of your sleep. So this was something that, as an engineer by trade, was almost painful for me to see how lack of good engineering, good patient experience really affect people's life. Looking at it more holistically, the big picture, you see that many people recently talk about the fact that sleep is really, or lack of sleep is really an epidemic in our age. People don't sleep well. As a result, they also have poor health and stress, and this is kind of a vicious cycle that people get into. They are not aware of how to solve it, how to measure, how to record, and how to get it better. And so that's kind of what drives us in our mission: help people get better sleep and as a result live healthier and better life. I also have a personal kind of angle to this. My father hadn't slept like well for I think the last 20 years, like sleeping in different hours, like weird hours and like weird positions, and we never knew kind of what is it, why is it like that. He works really hard, like physical work, and we always related to this, like he's very tired, etc. But as I started working on this, we actually diagnosed him for sleep apnea, and we learned that he had sleep apnea for all these years, and we never had the access to the tools and to the care that he needed for so many years. So that's another thing that I think I take from home and try to build for other people.
Okay, so yeah, it sounds like you've got obviously this technical background then, and you've got this personal relationship with sleep, obviously being a sleeper yourself, but in watching your father struggle with sleep and sleep apnea. And so we're going to get there, but you're going to marry those two things together, right? The technology and the improved sleep. Now, you had mentioned that we have, I think you said that this lack of sleep is an epidemic here now. Talk to us a little bit about that, because I think a lot of people don't understand what a lack of sleep does to them. Can you expand a little bit more on that? What happens when we don't get enough sleep?
All right. So there are a few elements to this. Maybe on the high level, when people don't sleep well, it's well known that it affects their productivity, their confidence, their ability to do things properly. Many times it leads to elevated stress and an anxiety. You don't succeed in what you do, so you becoming, your stress and mental health deteriorates. This actually leads to like unhealthy behaviors, like you eat more, you maybe exercise less, you elevate your risk to many comorbidities, like from cancer all the way to cardiovascular diseases. You gain weight, and then as you gain weight and get less healthy, your sleep is getting even worse over time. So you get into this kind of vicious cycle of lack of sleep leading to stress, anxiety, and also deteriorate and increases your weight and overall risk for comorbidities. So that's kind of in a high level perspective. More specifically about what happens when we sleep. Sleep is actually a very active process of our life. There are many elements or many things that happen during sleep that people are not aware. So, for example, tissue and cell repair. If you're injured, or just, for example, people that don't sleep well, will take them much longer to heal and to get better. Immune system strengthening as well. This is something that during sleep, our body works to heal ourselves and to get stronger. And people who don't sleep well will be more prone to, more recently, like COVID, but even, again, diseases like cancer and other things. So these are things that are very, very important to our health over time. And this is why we need to prioritize sleep.
Yeah, that's very well put. And I hadn't heard it put that way, but certainly we know that and all of us can anecdotally relate to that, right? If we wake up from a crappy night's sleep and we're grumpier, we make poorer food choices. We don't do what we probably should do. But the way you describe that is we're increasing all these comorbidities, and we weaken our immune system. We don't give ourselves that cellular repair opportunity there, which in turn creates worse sleep. And so we're in this vicious downward cycle. Now, before we go on and talk a little bit more about sleep, when we say we don't get adequate sleep, what is adequate sleep? What's the gold standard for sleep? Is it 8 hours? Is it personal? How does that look?
First of all, it's personal. Like every health and wellness aspect of our life, like nutrition, exercise, also sleep is very, very personal. Typically, it's recommended to sleep somewhere between like 7 to 9 hours in terms of like the amount of sleep. But there's also another very important aspect of our sleep. It's not only how long do you spend asleep, but also what is the quality of your sleep. So you can sleep for 7 or 8 hours, but if you have, for example, sleep apnea, you might gasp for air during your sleep. You might have events that fragment your sleep. Then your quality of sleep actually deteriorates. So it's actually a combination of those, how much time during the time you're in bed or you think you're asleep that you actually sleep well. And this is where better measurement and better understanding of sleep comes into play.
Yeah. Okay. So let's break this apart a little bit. And well, actually, before we go there, one thing that I've heard just sort of anecdotally is that as people get older, they need less sleep. Now, I'm Like I said before we started recording, I'm just about to turn 58. I've not found that to be the case for me. Is there any truth to that? Would say a 70-year-old need less sleep than a 30-year-old?
It is true that, when we are very young, we need more sleep. Like teenager need like around like 10 hours, babies need like 11, 12 even. So we do see this decline over time, but at some point in our adult life, we need to maintain like a certain level of sleep. And actually sleep issues are becoming much more prominent as you get older. Sleep apnea becomes much more frequent in older population, sometimes insomnia, etc. Sometimes because of other comorbidities, something is just like your body changes and you need to make sure that you track those changes over time. So we need to kind of make sure that we're on top of this when we get older.
Okay. Yeah. So, and I kind of thought that's what you might say, that the benefits of sleep, right? This tissue and cell repair, the strengthening of the immune system, certainly the need for that doesn't decrease as we get older, I wouldn't think. So let's talk about sleep. I mean, I guess if we're going to sleep 8 hours a night, that's a big chunk of our life. What happens when we sleep? Let's talk about the biology of sleep, I suppose.
Yeah, so I kind of touched it a little bit before, but sleep, as I mentioned, is a very active process that helps us in tissue repair and strengthening our immune system. These are things that happen during sleep. Another interesting process that happens during sleep is memory consolidation. So during sleep, our body and brain takes short-term memory and prioritize them, and some of them takes into long-term memory. So people who sleep poorly actually have more issues studying, learning new things. They will do poorly at school, etc. So this is another very important piece of what happens during sleep. Just like, a couple of examples of how important it is.
Yeah. And now folks listening probably are familiar with terms like REM and deep sleep, and they may understand that there's different phases of sleep. Can you break that down a little bit for us and what happens in each of those phases?
Yeah. So we have typically in science where we classify sleep into four main stages. Wake, where you obviously not sleep. Light sleep, where you just fall asleep. Typically it takes around like 20, 30 minutes. Then you get into like a deep sleep where all the things that we mentioned, some of them happen like tissue repair than other. And then REM sleep is another very important sleep for memory consolidation and other phenomena during sleep. So these, and we're basically transitioning between those phases as we sleep. It's not always like as ordered as we describe it. So sometimes you kind of, some of the stages will be shorter than others and etc. So we are going through these like cycles of sleep during the time that we're in bed.
And for healthy sleep, if we're asleep for, say, 8 hours, how many times might we expect to cycle through that light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep?
Each cycle is like 1.5 to 2 hours. So, 3 to 4 times that we might expect.
Okay. And so now there's a lot that can go wrong with sleep, right? We have a lot of people have insomnia. They have problems either falling asleep, or other people have problems staying asleep. What are some of the most common sleep problems? So
there are really like two main sleeping problems that people experience, and they're the most common. One is sleep apnea that we mentioned, and insomnia. Sleep apnea is where you actually stop breathing during your sleep. Typically, it's an event of more than 10 seconds. So you literally stop breathing for 10 seconds multiple times during your night. Many people are not aware because it typically doesn't wake you up completely, but it does create sleep fragmentation. So it transitions you from deep sleep to light, for example, or to wake as a result of these breathing events, basically. So people can experience from 5, 6 events per hour all the way to 70, 80, 100 events of stop breathing for more than 10 seconds in an hour. This can be a very severe health condition that leads to deterioration of your health over time. So this is sleep apnea. Currently, it's estimated, the numbers vary in different studies, but the one recent study showed that 54 million people in the US suffer from sleep apnea. Most of them are undiagnosed, so many people live with this condition without actually treating it, diagnosing and treating it. And this is something that we need to pay more attention to, because this is kind of, again, this is the might be a root for this vicious cycle. The other main sleep problem is insomnia. Of course, people are not able to fall asleep, to stay asleep. Maybe after they wake up, it's very, very difficult to go back to sleep. So these are things that might happen during insomnia. In opposed to sleep apnea, insomnia, it's much less understood and much more difficult to treat sometimes. It might come from different angles, from like psychological all the way to physiological phenomenon. So, but these are definitely the things that really affect most of the people during sleep. Other less common condition, but also worth noting, is restless leg syndrome, or during sleep is actually called periodic limb movement disorder, where you have like an urge to move your leg during sleep, and it actually, again, fragments your sleep and make your sleep quality worse. Narcolepsy and others, but these are typically less common.
Okay, so I want to go back to sleep apnea. I didn't realize that. I mean, you had mentioned 54 million in the U.S., and that number could even be higher since it may be going undiagnosed. Do we have any idea what causes sleep apnea?
Yeah, sleep apnea is actually much better understood phenomena. It's mainly physiological, so we can really look at this and understand, measure it, and understand when those like breathing events happen. One common cause for sleep apnea, for stop breathing during sleep, is the blockage of your airways during sleep. Typically, it happens with the tongue. The tongue collapses during sleep and actually blocks the airway. So people can experience it when they sleep on their back, for example. About 50% of people with sleep apnea have some positional effect. So when they sleep on their back, it's much more common than they sleep on their side, for example. But this is a very common reason for having sleep apnea. This is more specifically obstructive sleep apnea. The other type of sleep apnea is also, it appears about like 15 to 20% of the cases. It's called central sleep apnea. And in this case, your brain basically doesn't send the signals for your body to breathe. So we can actually measure it and see that you don't put in any effort into breathing during those episodes. And this is called like central sleep apnea. And this is where your body basically stops breathing for like more than 10 seconds. Again, multiple events per night.
Okay. Yeah. And it sounds rather alarming, stopping breathing. And you might understand if your tongue is collapsing and that's kind of closing off that airway, but it sounds even scarier if somehow your brain's not sending that very automatic signal to breathe. How serious is sleep apnea? I mean, obviously it's going to disrupt sleep, and so we're going to have all of the negative effects of not getting restful sleep. Are there other more dangerous effects of this?
Yeah, definitely. So this is part of this vicious cycle we discussed earlier. It's when you have those episodes, when you have those events, your cardiovascular system tries to compensate for this lack of air, and your heart rate elevates, your oxygen drops actually during those times many times, and it's pretty common. So you don't really rest well. This actually, if you carry this or you have this condition for many years, you don't rest enough, and as a result, you start developing other comorbidities. So, for example, some sleep issues and sleep apnea as well can lead to like an increased risk of cancer. Like it can increase like the risk of cancer by 5-fold, or three times more like for cardiovascular disease and cardiovascular death from cardiovascular actually issues. So if you carry this condition for many years, and that's the risk of being undiagnosed with sleep disorders and sleep apnea specifically, that if you carry it for a long enough time, you start developing other health conditions that actually are much more dangerous.
Okay, so I want to put a pin in sleep apnea right now because I suspect we're going to come back to that when we get to the technology of sleep and how we might detect if we have sleep apnea or if we have it, when it's happening, and what we can do to treat that. But right now, let's stick with sleep and sleep problems. And we mentioned that insomnia can be caused by a number of different factors. So let's start with alcohol. So there are folks that will say, I need alcohol to A, de-stress me from the day before, and B, it will help me fall asleep. But before we started recording, I told you I wear a Whoop band, and I can tell you right now, even a little bit of alcohol just destroys my sleep. I mean, it just does. And that's a N equals 1 study, right? And everybody's a bio individual. But what is the role of alcohol in sleep? And when somebody says it helps me sleep, is that necessarily true? I mean, it may help them fall asleep, but is that a healthy way to sleep?
So first of all, no.
Okay. I suspected you were going to say that, but yeah.
But it's a common myth that alcohol helps sleep better because just like with the effect of alcohol, people use it as a sedative actually to just fall asleep. But the fact is, alcohol actually dehydrates you and make your sleep quality much worse than without. So people use it and it might feel nice just before going to sleep and it's just like easier to fall asleep, but then your sleep quality is actually much worse. So we need to be very careful about drinking alcohol before bed. If you drink it, it should be like maybe a couple of hours before, and you need to hydrate yourself before sleep and just make sure that you deal with this properly because it's actually make your sleep much worse. So no, that's true.
Okay. I figured you're going to go there. All right. So that one was pretty easy. Another one that's really common and I hear a lot is melatonin. I take melatonin before bed and that helps me fall asleep. Good idea or bad idea? What's going on there? How is taking melatonin helping or hindering our sleep?
I think in this case, I think it's more about like the kind of the balance and how you use it and not kind of overuse it. Since some people it might help, especially people that travel and maybe move from one time zone to another and want to kind of rebalance their sleep. So this, for example, something that can be used. Overuse of this or overutilization might create kind of longer term implications. So, with some type of supervision or advice from like a sleep doctor or a sleep expert, I think this can work.
Okay. Gotcha. So if folks are taking melatonin, they might want to consult with their physician and because I haven't thought about that. Maybe if you're somebody who travels, you're going from one time zone to another, that it might have a use there. But long term, you probably want to get some medical advice, even though it's something you buy over the counter, I believe. But is it true? I mean, we naturally make melatonin ourselves. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So this kind of helps you tune your circadian rhythm if needed and things like that. So again, if you use it wisely and with the right guidance, I think it can work, but with moderation, let's say.
With moderation. Okay, fair enough. Okay, well let's talk about tips for improving sleep. Before we get into technology of sleep and maybe nerd out a little bit there and talk about measuring sleep a little more, what are some things that we can do, all of us listening here, to just improve our sleep naturally? We talked about some things you probably don't want to do. What are some things we do want to do to improve sleep?
Yeah. So first of all, again, as a disclaimer, sleep is personal. So one thing that works for one person does not necessarily work for other. And that's I think maybe will lead us to the next conversation about like how we measure and how we know what actually helps us during sleep. But kind of general guidelines, we talked about not drinking alcohol, not using screen time, etc. Things that you can do is exercise and be active during the early times of the day. This is something that will help your sleep over time. So be exposed to daylight, in the right timing that you need for your circadian rhythm. This is something that can help. One tip that I typically do before sleep, we're very busy during the day and we sometimes go to sleep with so many thoughts and things that are on our mind. So I typically, write down like things that I need to do or I want to do in the next day. And then I'm less worried about them when I go to sleep. So that's kind of a nice tip that I adopted. It really helps kind of clear the mind just before you go to sleep. So recommend people to try it at least.
Yeah. So I think what you're referring to there is that journaling right before bed. And I found that to be tremendously helpful, especially like you said, if your head is just spinning because you got so much to do the next day or the preceding day was so crazy. If you can empty that onto a piece of paper, sometimes that can really kind of clear the mind. I know for me personally, having a meditation practice or a prayer practice, along with a journaling practice, those sorts of things will certainly impact my sleep. I've also found that when I read, before bed, I typically, again, looking at my Whoop scores, my REM and deep sleep tend to be overall a little better than when I don't do those things, the meditation and the reading before bed, etc. Now, and you had mentioned exercise, obviously. I'm all about that. I think that's fantastic. I do believe that certainly would contribute to sleep. Yeah, I was going to ask you, what about blue blocker glasses? I don't know where the science is on that right now, but that seems to be kind of all the rage. Hey, I'll put on these blue blocker glasses, and that way I can still look at my electronic screens until right before bed. Is there any validity to that? Can we kind of hijack this or hack this by using blue blocking glasses?
I mean, we know that blue light affects your circadian rhythm and shifts your sleep cycle. So it is important to avoid blue light, and those glasses tend to help, in some cases. But I think kind of the side effect of keep using screens just before bedtime, you might actually be exposed to like different topics that prevent you from sleeping afterwards, and your mind stay busy as well. So if it's for something that kind of clears your mind, so definitely maybe it's helping. Again, you need to track it and make sure that it actually helps, because again, it's personalized. But yeah, so just make sure that you're not like overloading your brain just before sleep, even though you use a screen with glasses.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought of that. I suppose if you have your blue blocking glasses on, but you're scrolling through your social media feed and you're seeing things that are getting you triggered and all worked up, or if you're, reading the news or things like that, that might not be conducive to restful sleep. So, all right, well, let's transition here, Amir. I want to talk to you about, your real area of expertise here is the technology of sleep, I believe, right? So let's talk, first of all, let's start here. Most of us are familiar with Fitbits and Apple Watches. I've mentioned the Whoop a couple times. There's an Oura Ring as well. There's all these different technologies out here for tracking sleep. Let's start with, is that a good thing? Is this technology helpful for us? Is it changing behavior? What do you see just overall in the technology of measuring sleep?
I think overall, using those technology or the existence of the technology is great. It raises awareness. It's ubiquitous right now, and people are starting tracking their sleep and understanding better what can affect, etc. For some people, it's actually can be a problem, like tracking their sleep over and over again. They become like orthosomnia. They really try to excel in their sleep, or they get nervous about like sleeping better, and this actually create the opposite effect. So we also need to be careful about that. But generally speaking, I think that the increase of awareness as a result of using those devices is a good trend. The question now becomes like, okay, now we raise awareness. Now we can better understand or better track sleep over time. There are some non-contact trackers, there are wearable trackers, there are app trackers, etc. The accuracy, we need to take it with a grain of salt many times. Like not all of them has clinical validation. Not all of them have been tested in the specific environment that you will be sleeping at. So this is something that we need to take into consideration. And another point is, many people, I hear it from, clients and generally from people who are using those devices, you get a lot of data and sometimes it's overwhelming and you don't really know what to do with the data. And it's like a shoot in the dark, kind of no pun intended. But, if you want to understand what makes my REM like shorter or what makes it longer, it's very difficult to understand. Maybe it's related to your sleep position or your breathing or you don't have the ability to measure and to understand kind of the root cause for what can help you sleep better. So there is a balance of how you take this data and what you can really do with this. So first, accuracy, you need to make sure that it's validated, that it was tested in, again, environment like the one that you're sleeping at, but also it needs to have some actionable aspect to it. And I think that's one thing that, again, the wearables today, the apps, the non-contact are lacking right now.
And when you say non-contact, are you referring to, is there a way are there apps out there that are measuring sleeps that aren't actually touching you anywhere? Is that a thing?
Yeah, they're they're like maybe the most famous like sleep cycle can kind of show you where you are. But again, the accuracy, need to be or is affected at least by environmental conditions. So you also need to be aware of this. So I think when we refer to non-contact, it can give you more. They're also kind of under the mattress trackers. For example, Withings has one that I think those are typically, generally speaking, like less accurate and more giving you like directional because they are not on your body. They measure less physiological parameters and they are more related to movement and other elements of your sleep. So definitely it's a great technology that helps you track your sleep and give you guidance or give you data over a long period of time without any hassle, which is a huge improvement. The question is like, this is like a signal. Okay, now I'm not sleeping well. I know directionally where to go. What should I do now? Then you need to probably go to a deeper level of investigation.
Absolutely. So, and before we get to that deeper level of investigation and the next step in technology, how do these, I guess with the wearables, let's start there with the common wearables, the Apple Watches and whatnot, or these ones that have contact. How does it know when I'm in a certain phase of sleep and how long I'm in there? What is it actually measuring on my body? Is it my heart rate? Is it my heart rate variability? Is it some combination of things? Temperature, maybe? What's happening? What is it measuring and how does it know?
So that's a great question. Like the gold standard of measuring sleep stages is, of course, EEG, which are electrodes that are connected to your head and help detect which stage you are at exactly. There are obviously like Sleep Labs has those, some home sleep tests also, but there are also new consumer devices that can measure EEG recently and can help you determine your sleep stage more accurately. The wearables that you mentioned, like Apple and Fitbit and others, they typically use like actigraphy, which is basically the movement of your limbs during sleep, which is an indication because, for example, in REM sleep, your body is expected not to move at all. So this is one kind of a signal that you can capture and understand. There are other physiological phenomena that are related to specific stages of your sleep. For example, heart rate and heart rate variability, respiration rate, temperature is decreasing during sleep staging. So sophisticated algorithm takes all those into consideration and output this estimation of sleep staging. It's important to know that if you compare wearables accuracy to a sleep lab or kind of the gold standard, you typically get around, generally speaking, around like 70% accuracy. So it's not like 1-to-1. So again, this is like a rough indication or can give you some kind of general trend or guidance over time. But again, take it with a grain of salt.
Okay. And that's fair. And I think a lot of us, that may be intuitive, right? We probably know that we're not, that what we're wearing, our wristwatch really isn't dialing in exact numbers, but maybe it's giving this idea. But you had mentioned several times, okay, so now I see this data, I have this data, I'm tracking this over time. Now what? I mean, when I look at my personal data, I just think, what can I do? I like to see, what behaviors can I change that will make my REM or my deep sleep longer? Is that a good goal? What would be a good goal of taking this information and acting on it?
So the goal is, definitely like improve your sleep efficiency, how much you actually sleep while you're in bed. Like this relates to, even things like sleep apnea that create those like sleep fragmentation and it reduces your sleep efficiency, all the way to, insomnia, that you stay in bed, but you're not actually asleep. So improving your sleep efficiency, improving the, REM cycle, etc., is a good goal, but it's very hard to know what affects you. And again, we mentioned like about 15-20% of adult population might have sleep apnea and might have some breathing difficulties, upper airway resistance, things like that. They're very, very difficult to get from existing wearables. So this is where you kind of look at kind of the next level of, home sleep testing, sleep clinics, sleep labs that can really pinpoint, okay, you have this condition, position is something that affects your sleep, breathing events is something that affects your sleep. We start with those and we can at least narrow down the factors that actually affect your sleep. But it's important to remember that sleep and sleep improvements is often a multifactorial problem.
Sure.
It's not necessarily related. If you solve this aspect, it will solve all the issues. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it's much more complicated than that. This is why we need to develop both technology, but also awareness of all the factors that can actually affect your sleep. So that's kind of part of our mission as well.
Gotcha. And we haven't mentioned Wesper yet, that you're the CEO of this company, right? And a sleep technology company. And so it sounds like what we're doing is we're kind of building this almost a pyramid. We have these kind of contactless sort of sleep things that will measure, and we put it under our mattress maybe, and it measures how much we move, and we can infer certain things from that. And then we go to the next step. Maybe that's the Apple Watches and the Fitbits. And then maybe the next step is slightly making an improvement on that might be the folks like the Whoops and the Aura folks. But there's obviously several levels all the way up to the clinical gold standard that you mentioned. So talk a little bit about what you folks do, because if I'm not mistaken, is your product designed for consumers? Would somebody like me go out and buy that product? Because you got a very interesting offer out there. You have the technology, but you also have that technology, if I'm not mistaken, gets sold with I guess for lack of a better word, a consultant, a sleep consultant to help you interpret and take action on that. Talk to us a little bit about what that technology looks like and what it does.
Right. And I think you described it really well. Like there are like this pyramid of getting some general guidance all the way to get more accurate and consistent data over time. But then the main question is the why, or how, or what is the cause? Why is it that I'm not sleeping well? What is the root cause of my sleeping issues? And this is where, again, a more comprehensive approach should come into play. We mentioned like sleep labs and home sleep testing that you're going through a sleep clinic, but this is typically a very long, expensive, and inaccessible process. Actually, you need to go, meet your primary care physician, go to a sleep specialist, get an appointment, get maybe a home sleep test device home, maybe go to a clinic to really test your sleep. It can take months and hundreds to thousands of dollars sometimes. And this actually prevents for many people to get to the root cause of their poor sleep. And this is exactly the gap that we are trying to address with Wesper. We are bringing in a wearable form, in a form of smart patches that look like that, very comfortable, very easy to use, clinical grade accuracy and clinical grade insights into your sleep. So we can measure, for example, your breathing and breathing inconsistencies. We can help you track your environment, your kind of near body temperature. Is it too hot for you when you go to sleep? Is it too cold? We can also help you track your lifestyle factor. When was the last time you drank alcohol? And so everything is really being encompassed in one platform, all the way from environmental, lifestyle factor, all the way to physiological parameters. We also measure snoring, for example, to see the effect of snoring on your sleep, etc. So this is where we come in. It's not only about just like providing you with a lot of data over time, but now we can actually help you find the root cause and help you sleep better. And that's our mission, like really help you or bridge the gap between the clinical grade test that you need to go to a sleep lab and the consumer electronics or recreational devices that give you some data, but you don't really know what to do with it. So we are just in this, what we call like sweet spot of clinical grade, but also continuous measurement that can help you track your sleep and help understand what is the root cause of your sleep.
Gotcha. So this is fascinating to me. So if I'm not mistaken, something like what I'm wearing today, if I have sleep apnea, and you said people may not even know they have it, I'm not necessarily going to know that with this device, right? And I'm pointing at my Whoop watch, but it could be anything, right? It could be an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or any of these things that track sleep that are pretty common out there. Like you said, they're ubiquitous now. But if I had this technology that you're talking about, these smart patches, would that pick that up? It sounds like it's picking up a lot more information. Would I know then, oh, I do have sleep apnea. It looks like I stopped breathing here, and here through the night. Would I see those things?
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can start with our device right now. We're, the one that is available direct to consumer is still not able to diagnose if you have sleep apnea or not, but it does give you an idea of how consistent is your breathing during the night. And from that, you can infer if this is something that's of concern or not. So it's almost like a screening tool. We are going to launch a version in in the summer that will actually help you close the loop and diagnose all from home, which really be going to be like a game changer, because at that point you can screen and try to understand and track your sleep over time. But if you need a diagnosis with a very similar technology, we can help you, get to a sleep physician all virtually and get diagnosed eventually.
Okay. So, and now you had actually earlier, you held up one of those, I think you called it a smart patch. So let's try and describe this for folks. Everybody knows what an iWatch or a Fitbit is. And if those of you that have these contactless devices, you know what those are. Talk to us about what looked like a pretty small patch. Where does that go? And do I need a dozen of them? Do I just put one on? Do I slap it on my forehead? How does that work? Talk to us through that.
Yeah, so a little bit about the technology. So these smart patches are, relatively small, about 3 inches long, kind of a crescent shape. And they're very soft and flexible. So when you put them on, you hardly feel them on the body. In order to measure your breathing position and other factors, we require 2 patches to put one on your rib cage, one on your abdomen. And this is how we really can capture the different modalities of breathing. So we can breathing the abdomen. We can measure the abdomen breathing versus the chest breathing. This is how we can know if, for example, your brain doesn't signal to make a breathing effort, for example. So we're wearing 2 patches. There is a double-sided adhesives that come with them that you just replace when it wears. Typically we recommend after every night to replace this double-sided adhesive. And with this technology, we have a gorgeous app that can walk you through the collection of the data, but also start showing you trends over time, and you can match your sleep quality to specific intervention that you try or specific lifestyle factors that you change. Like, did you eat late? How did it affect your sleep? And now this technology was validated in several clinics and hospitals in the US. Now you can know that this is something that actually affect your sleep, so you have much more confidence in what you can do with this.
And I'm only going to put these patches on before I go to bed. Is that right? Or do I wear them all day?
No, it's for testing your sleep. So it's just before you go to bed. You take them off. You get a charger, wireless charger with them, so you can charge them between the nights. We have users that tested their sleep more than 50 times in the last couple of months because they really want to start seeing trends, and maybe they're using some intervention. They want to see how it really affects their sleep. And this, from testimonials, people say it's a very powerful tool to really see how things that they do and how their therapies really affected by or really affect their sleep eventually. So
I think this is fascinating. I've talked about sleep a lot on this podcast. I'm a huge fan of sleep and my own personal sleep journey. I struggled with some insomnia, and I would now consider myself to be a pretty good sleeper. I'm really good with my sleep consistency. I've got more or less a set bedtime and wake time, and I try to guard that very carefully. Like I said, I look at my biometrics. I track my REM and my deep sleep, and I look at different things that I do outside of sleeping, obviously, to see how that tracks that. But this sounds like this is taking that all to the next level. Who is this for? Is this for people that have sleep problems or suspect they have sleep problems? Or is this for people like me or for everybody? What's your audience with this kind of technology?
That's a great question. And I think that, first of all, people that we see that are kind of addicted to the sleep testing or really use it very extensively. People that have some symptom that they try to investigate and they really kind of trying one thing, measure. It takes time to perceive. You said yourself it probably took you some weeks or month or maybe
years. Yeah. It can take a long time.
You really need to try specific things and understand how they affect your sleep actually. So people that are investigating symptoms, let it be like snoring or waking up in the middle of the night or things like that, these are people that really benefit a lot from the device. Also, people that are already using some type of therapy or some type of device during their sleep, they can actually see if it's still effective. And this brings into the last audience, which is the broader population. We believe that because sleep is such a critical component of our health, we need to test it every period. Let's say at least every year, but maybe even like every month or every quarter. So you can really detect those like changes in your sleep quality early on, and you take action upon, because once you get into this vicious cycle, it's much more difficult to get out of it. So we also recommend to start using it, even early, or even if you try and you see that you are sleeping well, you can start having this, what we call like a sleep lab in your home, to kind of monitor your sleep over time.
Okay. And is the idea then that somebody would use your product periodically to test, or is the idea that this is something like your watch that you just leave on when you sleep? Is this something you would just do every night as part of your sleep ritual?
So we definitely see this, as we develop the product more, we definitely see this as part of your sleep ritual, where we can really guide you how to sleep better tonight, and what are the main things that you need to do and you need to take care of. Currently, we also see some patterns of, phases. People are going through like a sleep improvement cycle. They try an intervention, they understand what it is, they understand the effect, and then if they're happy or not happy with the results, they go again through the same cycle. So we do see some phases, like more intensive, like measurement into a period of like month or weeks, and then a little bit more sparsed out tests. But as I mentioned, we are working towards like a product that will help you sleep basically every night, which is like, super exciting for us.
Yeah, I bet. And are you comfortable talking about pricing on the podcast?
Sure.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know. So when I was doing research for this interview, I pulled up the website, and it looks like a pretty reasonable price. And what I'm seeing, it's $199 for the Wesper Sleep Improvement Platform. And talk to us a little bit about what is that? It looks like you're obviously going to get these little, what did you call them, smart patches, right? Is that a subscription? Is it just one time I buy it? How does that work?
Yeah. So currently we sell the product, as you mentioned, for $199. It includes 1 month full access to all the benefits that we offer, include one consultation with a sleep specialist. You can track your sleep data over time and see how it is affected by your sleep. You get access to the app where you can monitor and you can track. There is a sleep diary there that you can really see what type of intervention I try, what type of things I've done before going to sleep. So this you get access for a full month for $199. Some people, it's that it's enough for them. They understand what they have and they think. But many people actually continue afterwards with our subscription program, where you can then get this access to many months. Now we have kind of a promotional price for $10 per month, which is really affordable, let's say. We're going to increase this in the next few months, but it's a good time to lock this price.
No, that certainly is. I was a little surprised as I was looking through the technology and saw the price, because I was kind of thinking that this, was going to be more that clinical grade and therefore have that clinical grade price tag, frankly. And so when I clicked over to the Buy It Now tab, I was a little surprised. I think that's fantastic. And I'd love to give this a try and maybe give an update here in the future on this. Like I said, I've been nerding out on my own sleep, and it's made a huge impact in my life. Just improving my sleep has made, like I said earlier, it makes everything better. And I would like to take that next level here. Okay, so just a quick update here. After this interview, I did in fact purchase the Wesper Home Sleep Kit, and I've been using it for the last couple of weeks. I'm documenting my experience with it over on my private Facebook group, so if you're interested in following along with my experience and thoughts on this product, head on over there. The name of that Facebook group is the Over 50 Lean Body Blueprint, and I'll drop that into the show notes for this episode as well. And you can find that over at silveredgefitness.com/episode 109. Again, the name of that Facebook group is the Over 50 Lean Body Blueprint, and I'd love to see you over there. Amir, Great. This is all really exciting stuff. I love it. I'm passionate about sleep. I can tell that you are as well. what's on the horizon for you? What's next for you personally, and what's next for Wesper?
So we basically we are building a platform that will be the place to go for everything that you need for your sleep. So everything from screening, understanding what you have, tracking your sleep longitudinally, all the way to diagnosing and really understand, get medical advice and get the support that you need during your sleep improvement platform. We're going to launch this integration with medical provider, etc., later this summer. So it's something that is, we are looking forward to as a team, and it will make a big change in how we perceive clinical grade testing and how we track sleep over time. One thing that, sleep medicine right now is really lacking is this longitudinal data analysis over time. It's very, very difficult to, if you think about sleep lab, you do it once, you diagnose, and then basically that's it. And except CPAP, there are no tools to really monitor the effectiveness of any therapy over time. So with our device, we're basically a therapy agnostic tool that can help you monitor your sleep over time, and that's clinical grade. And it's something that we're really excited about. This combination of medical solution that can help you over a long period of time. This is something that will really change the field, and we're really, really excited to launch it later this summer.
Okay, and it sounds like that might be more something that I would get through my healthcare provider as opposed to as a consumer, or is that correct?
In order to actually get a diagnosis, you will need a prescription.
Yep.
But there are ways that we're now working on, like the user journey, where you'll be able to get a diagnosis from home, which is like a big change from the current experience.
Right. Okay, Amir, if folks are interested in this and they want to learn more about you or about your company, how can folks get in touch with you? What's the best way?
So first of all, our website, wesper.co, WESPER.co. This is our main website. You can look at what we're doing there and also purchase the device. This is something that I highly recommend, definitely for people who investigating symptoms, definitely for people who deal with sleep issues for many, many years, but also for people who just want to, keep a healthy sleep over time. So that's wesper.co. And you can also reach out to us at hello@wesper.co with any questions or any inquiries. So hello, HELLO at Wesper, WESPER.co.
Okay, and I'll drop that into the show notes so folks can find that there. But definitely would encourage folks to go out there and check out this technology. This is really cool stuff. If you're currently using any type of sleep tracker and paying attention to that, it looks like the next level here. Really fun, really cool technology. So, Amir, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, sharing all of your wisdom, your knowledge, and your passion on this subject. And I certainly wish you all the best with all your future endeavors.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It was a pleasure being here, and thanks for hosting me here.
Okay, folks, that's our show for this week. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. You can find all the links to all of the resources we discussed in this episode over at silveredgefitness.com/episode 109. And you can continue the conversation over there as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on today's show. As we wrap up our time together today, you can always show your support for this show in two important ways. One is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is to give this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I also want to let you know that if you've enjoyed this podcast, I have other free resources over at silveredgefree.com. There you'll find guides with my top tips on exercise, nutrition, and lifestyle. So feel free to head over there and download anything that looks useful to you and your health and wellness journey. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and until next time, stay strong.
you.